Hey, everybody, welcome back to Remotely Serious. My next conversation is with Vance from My Latin Life. And the My Latin Life brand is something you may have already encountered on social media. They post consistently and have their own podcast about life in Latin America. And Vance has interviewed hundreds of people on his podcast about their travels and their journeys getting to South America and traveling throughout Latin America, so South and Central America, and even Portugal and Spain in some cases. The Latin Life brand encompasses a lot of places and a lot of countries, so he's got a very wide breadth of knowledge on a lot of things. So I'm excited to jump in, and yeah, here's the conversation with Vance. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Remotely Serious podcast. I'm here with Vance from My Latin Life. And My Latin Life is a growing brand. It's been around for a while. You state it as the trusted guide, or your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America since 2014. I actually think the since 2014 part is therein lies a tale. There's a story there, because I've been listening to a lot of episodes of My Latin Life. So Vance, I'm glad to have you on the pod. But there was
Thank
one
you. Thank you.
episode on. You're welcome. No, I'm a longtime listener, a one-time caller when we did an episode together, and but I started to hear something. I was vaguely aware that this was a great brand that you had taken over, but then I heard something when you were talking to one of your guests about the OG Vance or the other Vance, and I was like,
Uh-huh.
well, what does that mean? Like, and then I actually went and heard an episode that's out there for everyone to listen to, which is your My Latin Life episode with, quote unquote, as I learned when I listened to it, the original Vance. So I was like, I became aware maybe later than I should have. I was like, oh, okay, this is like, it's like James Bond, that certain actors play the Vance, but then, there was a Sean Connery, now there's a Pierce Brosnan, like it passes down through the generations. So I was just curious, it looks like you took it over recently in the last couple of years, but it's been around since 2014. So I just thought it'd be a good place to start to kind of understand My Latin Life, but also your custodianship of it when you took it over, and the details you're able to share about how that came to be.
Yeah, that's funny and very observant too. Yeah, I guess as you can discover, there's layers to this, and most people don't know that there is an OG Vance and a newer Vance. And I suppose I would be the newer Vance, and I very much like the James Bond analogy because I guess kind of the idea is that there's a little bit of Vance in everybody. There's a little bit of James Bond in everyone, and it's a character that is assumed by a couple different personas, and maybe there'll. I've even had ideas of having like a female co-host and having her have a different code name and
Like a
just bring like a new dynamic to the podcast.
Vancita.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Vance and Nessa. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, something
um
like that.
yeah, Vance Nessa. But yeah, your podcast, it's built up a really great reputation. I actually I think you do something that's really interesting. So the brand is about empowering, educating, getting people excited about, and informing people about all kinds of opportunities to live, work, and emigrate, and move, and find residencies across the Latin American universe, and even in some ways,
Mhm.
incorporating some of Spain and Portugal and the Mediterranean, but mostly with a focus on Latin America. And I think something you do that's really interesting with your podcast is you have a very broad spectrum of guests. I listened to several different, remote work, sovereign individual podcasts and creators and properties. And you'll have everyone on from like the hardcore libertarians that are like, well, I've created my own nation state to get some crypto to, I never want to pay another dollar to Uncle Sam. But you'll also bring on like Chase Warrington, who's like, yeah, man, I just work for a remote startup, and remote work is cool, man. Like, and it's no, and not so political, a little bit more political, and then just people that are like experts on where to put gold bars. And it's not just passport bros, it's not just digital nomads, it's the broadest range of guests I think I've ever seen in a podcast in this wide genre. So I'm just curious, have you ramped up how many guests there were, like pre and post 2022? But I guess I'm kind of giving you a layup on like, hey, your guest strategy is awesome. why are you so awesome? But that's kind of the layup question for you to alley oop. Like, how did
Yeah,
you
no, thank you.
attack
I
that?
appreciate that, and I think we do take pride in having a interesting range of guests. I think everyone is tangentially related to the themes that you mentioned: remote work or Latin America, investing in Latin America, things like that. Just different angles. It's good to some days have some guy that went to every country in the world, and then the next week you have a tax advisor that's sitting at home in New Jersey, but he does the taxes for all these crazy expat adventurers. So you kind of get everything on the spectrum of expats, I guess. So to your question about the frequency, I actually picked that up from our mutual friend Mitko. I was asking Mitko, I was like, hey, how are you growing your thing, your podcast? So shout out to Mitko's podcast, That Remote Life. But he said amp it up from 1 a week to 2 a week. And I was like, you know what? I could totally do that. I have a massive backlog anyway. So here we are, 2 a week.
That often seems like a genre of business advice in terms of, I'm getting some success. I'm starting to grow and I'm starting to see things are working. Hey, what should I do? And the answer is often just like from a mentor or something or someone that had some experience. It's just, oh, if something's working, just do more. Yeah, double it, triple it. And as simple as that is, it's often just getting that kick to be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just do twice as much and then I'll grow faster. It's as simple as that sometimes. I think it's you got to be on to something first. It's got to be working for one for it to work for two. But I definitely, yeah, I listen to my Latin life at the gym, and I noticed that like, oh, I've got more queued up than usual. At some point, whenever you made that switch, I was like, oh, I got a backlog here, and you're often in the 2 hour range. You'll take people on a long journey in a very fruitful journey across all aspects of your guest. So it's definitely it's like a nice long steak dinner.
Thank you. No, it's great hearing this feedback. And sorry if this is a boring introduction to everyone for the podcast, but we're just jamming here. It's great to get this feedback because none of my real life friends really listen to the podcast, and I don't really overly solicit feedback on the episodes all that much, be it on Twitter or from hardcore listeners or anything. I just put it out, and the numbers are pretty good, and uh, so I'm like I'm like low involvement, I guess, in my own podcast. It's kind of funny.
What is the media company or the business model of My Latin Life? I'm literally just thinking, do I hear ads a lot on My Latin Life? And I don't think you're not. It's definitely not packed with ads. So,
We do have ads now. Recently, I mean, we have two sponsors as of the recording of this. We have Language Blend and Bit Refill. So
mhm.
Language Blend is for learning Spanish, and then Bit Refill is for buying gift cards with crypto, which is a pretty cool tool for digital nomads. And so yeah, we've had some sponsors, which you could say keeps the light on. It's not nothing groundbreaking, but it's cool.
So what originally motivated you to create a Latin American focused media brand, as opposed to just living the life and doing some other Wi-Fi money business?
Yeah. Well, it's not my primary business. So I do other stuff, and then this is kind of just like the hobby thing.
Oh, nice.
So it's been about a year and a half now that I've been doing the podcast. So we're up to about 90 episodes published at the time of this recording, and there's another like 10 in the backlog already recorded. Did one earlier today with Wealthy Expat, who's pretty well known from YouTube. So was pretty happy about that. He's a pretty sought after guest, I would like to think. So happy about that. But yeah, man, I think it's coming from a place of passion and fun. I mean, I've been doing the Latin America thing and full time digital nomad life for a long time, longer than most people. And I think we have a pretty unique kind of positioning in terms of Latin America and digital nomads and expats. And we're going to mature over time as well. I think, we're constantly kind of professionalizing more. I recently went to the IMI conference in Malta, the investment migration and what's the final I for insider? But anyway, the IMI daily conference in Malta, and it's all I go there like a month ago, and it's like all the big wigs and the heads of the investment migration companies. These are the people that sell the Malta passports for $1 million. They sell the Caribbean passports. They do residencies, all over the world, and kind of the firms that facilitate investment migration and golden visas all over the world, including Portugal and the rest of it. So, kind of getting more onto the professional side of the industry and the real estate investment side of the industry. That's kind of where we're going a little bit more.
Got it. Well, maybe let's dive right into that as a topic. So, investment migration, you can correct me, but I assume that it refers to all of the various programs where there's some form of financial investment or purchasing a real estate property of a certain valuation that leads you to get either residency or citizenship very quickly or faster than you would through some other means. Like,
Mhm.
$135,000 or euro property gets you X, Portuguese residency or citizenship later, or Saint Lucia or some Caribbean island.
Right.
Often it can happen very quickly. That's what that conference is that's what investment migration refers to.
Yeah, pretty much. I think that was an excellent Wikipedia definition of it.
Is there like that's the Wikipedia definition, but like behind the scenes or down on the boots on the ground, it's something else or it's different, like or there's more to it.
I mean, it is kind of like that. It's a very boutique industry where no one player has significant market share. There are a couple big names like Henley and Partners, Arts and Capital. So there's a couple players that have been around for like, 15, 20 years, maybe longer, that have kind of shaped the industry and actually helped, in some cases, help these governments create their own immigration processes and systems and incentives. So some of the companies actively help the government, and then of course other people are just like facilitators. And so things look a little bit different on every continent. The global landscape is always changing in terms of migration, as you might expect. In Latin America, it's a little bit different than Asia and Europe and stuff. And I guess all the differences is what keeps it fun.
Yeah. What I'm wondering, and this is somewhat from an outsider's point of view, but with all of the various remote work visas, which they have pros and cons, and
Mhm.
they're inadequate in some ways, but they're starting to exist more and more. I'm wondering about the next 5 to 10 years where there was a situation where you need to buy a 250,000 minimum euro property and then you get residency or citizenship. Now there's more programs, more flawed programs, but there's more programs where it's just, hey, prove you can make $2,000 a month on a nomad visa and you also get residency. And I'm just wondering if the lower stakes remote work visas that are just like, yeah, just prove your income. And people's like, great, that now I don't have to pay 200 grand to buy a condo or something in Montenegro. I can just prove 2 grand a month and still get there. Does that change the dynamic of this era of the investment migration real estate, or is it bigger than ever? Is that are they not as related as I think?
Yeah, there's definitely a bunch of ways I could answer that, but I would say that most countries have an option to buy real estate or otherwise invest a lot of money and get residency that way. And then most countries have other options where it's more like you get a job in the country, and so you need a visa to, accept the job, or retirement visas, also known as pensionado visas, or independent means visas, non lucrative visas. Of course, there's digital nomad visas, and these ones that you're not really investing a lot of money. I would say they're certainly related, obviously. And I would say that they're different tools that governments and economies in different places in their economic cycle are going to use at different times. So, for example, a country like Portugal, which had like a terrible drop in real estate prices and stuff like that, they wanted to incentivize real estate. They do the golden visa, buy the house, 250K, get the visa. Cool. But once a economy gets overheated, like we've seen in Canada or like we're seeing now in Ireland and in Portugal, it becomes less politically popular to have golden visas where you're just buying houses, because basically what happens is just deep pocketed Chinese and East Asian people come in, and it's nothing for them, and they're just getting these visas, but they really have no intention of actually spending too much time there. It's just like a plan B, or maybe they send their kids there for college or something like that. And so I think what you're seeing is there will always be certain countries that will incentivize golden visas that way, but we're finding that it's a little bit politically unpopular. And what we're seeing is more of a push towards the type of visa where there's more physical presence, and where you're spending time in the country to maintain the visa and sort of work towards citizenship that way. At least that's sort of the mindset in the EU. Is they think that citizenship is something that's kind of more cultural and should be earned and not something that you can just buy, basically.
Got it. So a lot of your guests are people who have experience, maybe broadly across Latin America, but often they staked out a claim, I guess is the right way to put it, on a certain country. So there might be a Paraguay expert, or there might be a Brazil expert. And I'm not saying everyone's like this, but there are certain people that have kind of promote a
Sure.
certain country. Argentina, is another one.
Mhm.
Boat Argentina, Lawrence, the various people that you've had on your podcast. I encourage people to go check out the back catalog. You get to have this broad index of talking to everyone, and you have a claim, or you put out a brand on the Latin part, but you can hear from everyone on all of these countries. So in 2023, after several cycles of Latin American immigration, Latin American adventure and exploration, and now a very a growing and established culture around exploring sovereign movement, the opportunities in the sovereign individual movement, and residencies and passports.
Mhm.
Are there certain countries that are better than others now, right now in 2023, across Latin America, that just stick out, like you've heard it all? Such and such country, or another is definitely more attractive than others for the emigration movement, the passport movement, the residency movement.
I think it depends on a couple things, of course. It depends where you're coming from and what passport or citizenships you have already and where you have residency already. So, you know what I mean? Obviously, for an American, the opportunity set is going to be a little bit different than even for a Canadian, largely due to citizenship based taxation. But then also, they might just have little quirky differences, like Americans have certain treaties with like the Netherlands and things like that. So the opportunity set that you have is a little bit different. Like you kind of have a different chessboard to play with depending on what your job is, what citizenships you have, how you earn income, what type of income or savings you're able to demonstrate or move around, right? Because, for example, there's ones you can get with like investment in bonds or like certificates of deposit. Long story short, the chessboard looks a little bit different for everyone, but everyone's going to have commonalities as well. And I think a base in Latin America, meaning getting a residency permit in at least one Latin American country, is a good idea. I think the Latin American countries have pretty much no downside, and there's really quite a lot to choose from. Central America is attractive to a lot of people, and then South America is attractive to a lot of people, the Caribbean as well. But I think at least one residency permit in somewhere in Latin America is a good part of anyone's strategy.
Where does Mexico fit in all of this? Is it because of its size? I'm just wondering about the ability to kind of get back to places. There are places like the Southern Cone that are, I'm sure, wonderful, but they're further away from Europe and Asia, North America. And then Mexico, in some cases, it's like an hour and a half away from certain American cities. Is it kind of Mexico is gas giant that's kind of like 50 to 60 to 70% of the interest, and then everywhere else kind of compares to Mexico? I've kind of built that up in my mind. Like Mexico is huge, and everywhere else there's lots of great opportunities, but they all kind of in aggregate are about equal to this amazing interest in
Yeah.
Playa, Mexico City,
Well,
etc.
and you got to remember that that's Mexico is really for Canadians and Americans because it's not as easy for Europeans to get there. In a lot of ways, it's actually easier for a European to get to Brazil than it is to get to Mexico, just in terms of direct flights and so forth. They've opened up more to Cancun, but like flying into Mexico City from Europe is traditionally like pretty expensive. So that's one thing, is that Mexico is more of a play for Canadians and Americans. But that being said, obviously, if the direct flights, whatever, isn't a big deal, Mexico is really great for everyone because it's a very easy residency to get. It's also a very easy residency to maintain in terms of low physical presence requirements to maintain it. So it's easy to get, easy to maintain, and there's really not much downside to having it. So Mexico is a good base for everyone for sure.
In 2020, 2021, and going into 2022, the Western world, or the G7 world itself, was having an insane tech money, internet business, internet marketing boom. through and crypto boom, I should in crypto, and a lot of the Venn diagram of the audience that's interested in sovereign residency in Latin America and crypto is there's some overlap there.
For sure.
And the circles overlap. And 2022, late 2022 and late 23 have seen a big retrenchment in just layoffs of the kind of remote jobs that might send people to, remote work places around the world. Crypto crashed. It's having a little bit of a renaissance this summer, but it's nowhere near what it was. Do you see a slowdown in the excitement of your audience? Do you hear about certain legendary bros that were killing it, but then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, they went back to Regina, or like
Legendary pros.
I thought they were killing it, but they went back to Melbourne, or whatever it is. You're much more boots on the ground in
Yeah,
Latin
I
America
got my
than me.
ears to the streets of the
Yeah,
legendary
the
bros.
legendary pros. Because I mean, I'm not going to call anyone's name out, but I'm like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Just some random person that was like, yeah, I go here, and then they're like, oh yeah, well, they got a job. They're back in Toronto at Shopify or whatever, and no, which is there's nothing wrong with that, but it's kind of like I'm just hearing these tiny little anecdotes, and I'm like, is there a certain era that lasted, maybe the COVID golden years of exploring, that might be on a wane?
Yeah, I think my thoughts on this is that the percentage of the US economy or the world economy that works remote is going to steadily trend up into the right, kind of just like a market. It's going to be like the chart of the stock market. It's going to go down sometimes. You know what I mean? It's going to have down years, but it's going to overall trend up into the right just because we're getting more technological and more work is going to be online. What did we like over move online due to the events of 2020, and then we're sort of course correcting? Probably, but we're still course correcting to a percentage of remote workers that's still way higher than it was in 2019, right? So it's certainly grown a lot in the past number of years, and it's not going anywhere, man. Especially you see all these anecdotes about just, whether it be the central bank digital currencies or just carbon taxes or all these like insane ways that we're losing our freedoms in Europe and in North America. I think just more and more people are over time gonna appreciate the safety or the freedom, sorry, of life in Latin America.
You said safety and then backtrack to say freedom. That's actually a good point,
I
because
meant yeah, I meant safety from government.
yes. The biggest stereotype, though, which you probably are wanting to debunk, or, I shouldn't say probably. I've heard you debunk it a bit on your episodes, but safety is the reason this stuff is so cheap. The reason everyone's not moving to Latin America is because, out of the, let's say, 450, I don't know, 400 million people in North America, let's say, probably 390 or maybe 350 million of them think, oh, Latin America, it's not safe. Like that is a big sort of bulwark or dam that's stopping more people from just getting up and moving to Latin America. They believe, the safety of, their suburb in Minneapolis or Vancouver is just the first world, and down there is the third world. I'm not saying I believe that, but
Yeah, I have a lot of answers
yeah,
to this.
yeah, take the floor.
The first one would be the famous Benjamin Franklin or Andrew Jackson quote, which is like, "Those who will give up freedom for a little bit of safety deserve neither," something to that extent,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so it's pretty hard to balance freedom and safety as a society, but I think erring on the side of freedom is probably better. Here's the thing: is I think Canada, the U.S., and Europe have become significantly less safe, even just in the past 5 or 10 years. Canada is way less safe. Vancouver is like an open air drug market. Toronto is homeless, crazy homeless people on every corner. Europe is way less safe than it is. Like you're even in Europe, your apartment's going to get broken into, and there's like a lot more street crime, especially in like Spain and certain spots. So I think that's part of it, is like that these places that used to be kind of perfect, whether it be Northern Europe, like Sweden or Toronto or something like that, these places that kind of used to be perfect, they're really not perfect anymore, and it's going to be hard to put the genie back in the bottle. So they're probably never going to be perfect again. And so it's kind of a case of the legacy brand and the reality just not catching up on the ground, where, you know what I mean? Like it still has a good reputation from 50 years of a good reputation, but it's not quite that amazing on the ground anymore.
Well, there's definitely a strong, I believe, and I think agree with you that there's a strong chance that a certain kind of Ponzi scheme is going to come to an end, in the sense of, 40 years ago, I don't know, 35 years ago, going on 20 years ago, there were, as a stereotype, and maybe there was some truth to it, or there probably was some truth to it 20 years ago, 25 years ago, that there's like 7 or 8 countries that people want to go to that are the first world, that if you could just save up enough, you might immigrate. And, it's England, Australia, Canada, the United States, France. And if you're from Tunisia or Serbia or Pakistan, you might go for a better life to one of the developed countries. And it's a much more level playing field, setting even aside the multipolarness of, US versus China and India and Russia and the alliances there, just across the world. I think the legacy brands, which is a good term that you've used, are going to realize that you can't just say, hey, we're the best, like we're luxury, come on, like everybody wants to be here. People are, settling down in Colombia or Portugal or Croatia, and dozens, 50, 100 other countries start to become not exactly the same, but equally attractive or more attractive for their freedom, for their cost of living. It's just going to be a death
Yeah.
spiral of, well, okay, oh crap, our tax base isn't growing as much as we thought, and our birth rate isn't up as much as we thought. So we're going to need more tax or monetary based inflation to somehow pay the bills.
Hmm.
And it's not going to work the way that the policymakers think it is. And that's going to be difficult to get into this sort of a bit of a fall of Rome. It's not going to be fast. I don't think there's going to be like an apocalypse in British Columbia and in London, but there's going to be a slow flatlining that just it's not going to return to what it was.
Yeah, I think the thing is just life was very easy in Canada and the USA and Switzerland for a very long time, where you got rich basically just existing and working like an average job and buying a house when you were supposed to buy a house, and the house goes up, 15-20% a year. And so all our parents' generation and the baby boomers, they all got rich just working a job, getting um, overpaid for above, as Seth Godin would call it, above average pay for below average work. And that's basically how the economy worked in Canada and all these other places. It was just above average pay for average work. But now, kind of with globalization and kind of a much more globally competitive marketplace, where for goods and services we're competing for against the world in a way that we were not 15-20 years ago. I think that fact alone of the increased competition, I think that alone has a lot of pressure on wages, and it's going to bring down wages in the West and subsequently kind of raise wages in the East or in low wage areas. And so everything's going to kind of regress a little bit towards the mean. So it's just not as stark of a difference now and in the future as it was in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, so many aspects of the world are getting better. If you look at who's dying of malaria, how much of a middle class is there? There's like a classic graph that shows a bunch of stuff getting better, but for this specific group of privileged, born in the 20th century, middle of the 20th century, it is flatlining and getting worse. So it feels to them like there's this decline, but it's sort of like they're in a little tiny little group that's declining, and everywhere else is getting more chances. It's not going to be equality of outcome for everybody, but there's like there's never been more opportunity to make Wi-Fi money from anywhere and not have to like get the wait 7 years for the green card to get to the United States, to get the taxi driver job, to someday have your child have a better life. You can, most people could theoretically, open up their phone, even if they can't afford a laptop, start trying something, and there's the opportunity to make a better life.
That's the thing about remote work is you got to be good, especially with remote work. If you're the only plumber in town, I guess you can be average, but if you're doing something online where you're really competing against the world, you got to be good. You got to be unique. And so, it's a double-edged sword because you get that freedom of working online and you can travel the world and all these things that I wouldn't trade for anything. But, there's definitely a pressure to perform or to have some sort of special skill set that can't be outsourced.
So I'm I'm not in my 20s. I'm a little older than that. But in terms of I mean, I'm sure a lot of your audience are people that are curious. They're not necessarily already in Latin America. They're not necessarily remote workers, but they're curious, and you are
They're remotely
remotely
curious.
curious. And
Bada bing.
boom. And so let's say there's some remotely curious person who's one generation younger than me, and it's a 21-year-old in Ottawa, Canada. They're sitting there listening to My Latin Life, and they're talking to their friend. What are you doing? Oh well, I just graduated from I don't know, McGill, and I'm going to go work for the Ministry of Trees for the rest of my life, or whatever, some job in
Yep.
Ottawa, or I'm going to go and do this. And they're listening to My Latin Life, and they're thinking, you know what? I've got 3K in the bank from such and such summer painting job. I'm going to take it, and
Yep.
I'm going to Latin America. Yeah.
Oh, the summer painting job's classic. That's
Yeah.
a Canadian rite of
Yeah.
passage.
Yeah. Summer painting job. Taking the GO train.
College pro
College pro
painters.
painters. Yeah. Yes. Summer 2004. College pro painter signs everywhere. Listening to the White Stripes. Yeah. So if they're thinking I want to go to Latin America, do you have opinions on, like, okay, if you're gonna go to Latin America, you're 21, you got 3K. Where should they start? What should they do first?
Okay, I guess the goal is how long are you trying to make that 3K last? Because 3K is not that much.
Well, let's say they're trying to make it. Yeah, they don't want to come back to college pro painters next summer, and they don't have a lot. So I'm just here. Is there a launching pad that's the best for extending the runway on an absolute shoestring budget?
Well, basically, you need to start making money online as soon as possible to extend your runway. And I remember there was a phrase that someone told me when I first started working remote and was much closer to paycheck than I am now. And someone said to me in the first couple months, they said, "Hey, man, if you can make this work now, you can do this the rest of your life." And so I knew is if I could just get it to start working and get the train chugging, then I could keep things afloat basically inevitably, or forever, because I would have found kind of product market fit in terms of finding a product or service to sell into the marketplace and basically just get a paycheck. So what would I do? Well, I would basically just start grinding on LinkedIn for remote jobs, and I would just apply to hundreds of jobs a day. I would be thoughtful about your resume and the story that you're telling, and being able to, uh, speak well when you're getting those phone calls. The first like filter phone call, and tell a good story about how you're going to make a difference for the company. And basically, just grind on LinkedIn until you get some job offers. And I typically recommend people start with a remote job instead of entrepreneurship or starting a company. I think a remote job is just easier to get. It's more secure, and it's just going to get you there faster compared to a job and trying to do drop shipping
Yeah,
or whatever kind of like the business model du
yeah.
jour is of the day, copywriting,
Yeah,
agency.
there's so much influencer marketing around quit your job, become a nomad, move to Latin America, and make money online, like, all at once, is like the dream. It's like learning a language and getting divorced and moving all
Yeah,
at
so
once.
I think about, we call it monkey branching. And so you think about, if you're Tarzan in the jungle, you don't let go of the previous branch or vine until you firmly grasp the new vine. And so what I would say is, to the extent that you can monkey branch into remote work, it's just going to make things a lot smoother. There's no reason for this to be a chaotic transition. Like there's no reason for this to be chaotic at all, because you got to keep in mind that everyone gets paid online already anyway. You already get paid online, dear listener, because no one's giving you cash, no one's giving you a physical check that you have to bring to the bank in cash. You're already getting paid online. You're getting paid direct deposit. The money is going to your bank account digitally, right? The only problem is that people are providing an in-person service, such as being a nurse or a firefighter or a carpenter or whatever. That's what makes it, not remote, is that you're providing an in-person service. You're already getting paid online, but you're providing an in-person service to get paid online. And so you just need to start providing a service that you can complete online.
Makes total sense. Yeah. And I think everyone's first monkey branch may not be the same. And you don't need to look at someone who's already a React front end web developer, their first monkey branch to move from San Francisco to Latin America is going to be a different monkey branch than a plumber that decides, okay, I've got some plumbing cash saved up. I want to move to Latin America. Different monkey branch. They're going to need to solve something else first. Whereas the React developer might just say, okay, well, I'll get a React job and then I'll move and da 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 da. Like it's and so it's good to distinguish between that. And I think it was kind of muddy, and the whole space got a bit of a bad rap from the mainstream media because this was so muddy and mixed up. And I think you got it right. For probably 95% of people, do not become an entrepreneur. It is an extra level of stress on top of learning Spanish or Portuguese and finding your accommodation and dating and everything else. If you just kind of find that remote job, that's a monkey branch that's way lower hanging than you know 10K a month in
Yes.
Wi-Fi entrepreneur passive money.
So it makes sense. Yeah, I mean, there's no perfect answer because you can get a job already on the ground in Mexico. I've had buddies do it. I've changed jobs while I was, outside the US where I had a remote job and then I had to get another one. And sometimes there's complications, like I have to get a new laptop shipped to me, or maybe I have to go to the States for a week to do some paperwork or something. But you could totally just take the flight and figure it out on the ground. But I don't know, I don't think these things need to be overly chaotic necessarily.
I think I saw, maybe you're tweeting about it or the My Latin Life said it somewhere. I don't know. But you mentioned that you still actually do spend some time in Europe, a month or two in Europe. What's your actual cycle like in terms of your bases? Where you nomad, and has that changed? And do you see that changing in the next couple of years? What do you actually do? January to December for your cycle.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's definitely changed over time. I think I try to travel in a way where there's a purpose to where I travel to. Typically, it's been chasing a residency where you got to spend a little bit of time on the ground, or just doing different trámites, basically, paperwork tasks. So I try to travel with purpose generally, and I try to weave things together where I just try to like weave things together where maybe I have a business purpose, but also buddies or a hobby I want to do or a city that I want to check out. So it's not too much just, eating gelato and looking at architecture. I try to travel with purpose. And I think that everyone else should too, because at the end of the day, if you're going to be spending time away from your family and stuff or other obligations you might have somewhere else in the world, you should be doing so for a good reason. And so I think, even something as simple as learning the language, I think, is a worthwhile endeavor. But try to travel with purpose, basically.
Have you ever shared publicly your target residency strategy, the countries that interest you and where you're building out residencies and bases?
I've definitely hinted here and there, and I'll tell people offline. For the most part, I don't know if I've ever actually said A to Z everything I have going on. Put me on the spot. How much should I reveal? So I do admit that I may or may not be a Canadian American dual citizen, and that I have multiple residencies in Latin America and in different places. How much can I reveal? I mean, I was definitely one of the first people to do Paraguay before the pandemic, to give one time denotement, I guess. So I did Paraguay even before the pandemic, so long before it got super, super popular. Mexico as well, I often comment as one of my bases. Panama, I comment as well as being one of my bases. Um, Portugal as well, I say may or may not be one of my bases. Yeah, and more to come.
Would you say that maybe coming at this from a more generic angle, sort of the same topic, but a little bit more generic, so you don't have to say anything specific? Would you say that like the reason some of the people in this space are bow tied gentlemen or anon whatever is that specifically to make sure that the Her Majesty's Revenue and the IRS and the CRA can't just get information? Is that the main benefit of a decent anonymous strategy? Is that the driver of that for folks, not saying you, but certain folks where it's like, okay, they're behind an avatar and they have a different name or whatever. No one needs to justify what they do, but I just assume that's sort of why. But I don't know if there were other reasons why, benefits for for someone who's considering whether to be themselves or be a non, pros and cons.
Yeah, I think this space is tough. I think people probably aren't, no one's like super shady that I come across in the industry. Really, everyone seems like pretty well intentioned and above board. I think it's just like unnecessary scrutiny. Even like an audit, even if you've done everything right, an audit is still a huge investment in terms of dealing with an audit and presenting all the documents and just like the mental load and everything. So people just don't want to deal with that type of stuff. And I mean, I think it works for both people. I honestly I don't see too many semi and non people that take it super far. I feel like most people kind of like reveal
Yeah.
eventually. I don't I
It's
don't
there
even
if you
know.
want to look, but they're not going to go out of their way to be like, here is my, social security number and my address and all that. Obviously.
Yeah, I was talking to like wealthy expat about this. I was, I asked him today. I was like, why do you come out and say that your name is Raphael instead of just, saying wealthy expat? And he just kind of said, "This is me, and I want to be trustworthy." And we're in the offshore space, which is already very smoke and mirrors and low trust. And so I thought, I'd be more high trust by just putting my name out there. So that's what Andrew Henderson did. That's, I guess, what Raphael from Wealthy Expat did. So I think it does. It can help in the industry. I think both are good. It just depends where you want to send your like notoriety and stuff. It's funny because it's like I'm in a funny spot personally right now because now I'm at the place where if I go anywhere in Latin America, I can just tweet that I'm there and get like a squad to come out for steak and cigars, or even like host like a impromptu event, or like a summit or meetup or something like that. I've already been doing a bunch of meetups in different cities, and I could probably do them even bigger. But it's funny because they're kind of meeting up with like a semi-anonymous figure. But that's the idea. Is it really puts the mirror back on everyone else. Like if you look at my Telegram groups, um, I have a bunch of free Telegram groups that maybe you can be so kind as to link up in the show notes for this. And it's just like totally everyone contributing and saying stuff. And hey, what's up with this? I heard they closed this program. How do I cross this border? If I use this bank account, can I use crypto with it? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm not even really engaging all that much. Like, I don't really feel like I need to engage. Everyone is already contributing so much. And so, I guess it's more community first this way with the semi-anonymous things. It's really all about the community, and I think a lot of people get a lot of good information from reading the comments on my tweets and being part of these groups and stuff.
Yeah, you mentioned Andrew Henderson, who runs Nomad Capitalist. I think for a lot of people that aren't familiar with the space but happen to use YouTube, Nomad Capitalist, they tend to publish a fresh video on a certain topic. Like it seems like every 20 minutes all day long for years and years, and there's tens of thousands of their videos. So they're just a high they're prolific in publishing videos, and they've established a brand. They're unabashedly upscale. He says I help 7 and 8 and 9 figure entrepreneurs or whatever he says. I help really, really
Right.
rich people.
Only
Yeah,
11
yeah.
figures
I help
or
11
more.
figure entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
get a tax lawyer or whatever. Um, but it seems like there's going to be so many more people that are just decent, awesome, 100,000aires and millionaires or whatever, that it might be, for what they might not qualify for the prestigious Nomad Capitalist tax lawyer reselling program. So, do you think do you think that there's an opportunity there, or what do you like? This is what's going on in the Telegram group. There's probably a bunch of people looking for this kind of service. Like, have you been to the Nomad Capitalist event? Is it is it one of these things where there's a huge gap in the market for someone to come in and compete? Are people already competing with that brand? I am being a little bit facetious about the brand, but it's only because I think my thesis is like there's room to compete there. Like they're established, but they're really very specific about how they present themselves.
Yeah, of course. I think there's so many sub niches in this that There's definitely like a lot of nooks and crannies that people haven't even talked about yet. Like even something like birth tourism, it's becoming more popular. Having a baby in Mexico or Brazil, and there's all these questions around. Okay, so the baby gets a citizenship, the parents get maybe permanent or temporary residency, and then they can work towards citizenship. Blah blah blah. So people kind of know about Mexico and Brazil, but this birth tourism thing basically works in every country in Latin America, and no one's ever really like compiled all the information from every country about like exactly how it works and stuff. So someone could even make like a niche fully devoted to that and build a business around that, and I'm sure they do well. So there's like a million sub niches because we're just at such a very, maybe that's a bad example, but Curtis, like we're at such an interesting place, and pretty good timing starting the podcast. And I know you had on the Palau guy,
Jay,
uh,
yeah.
Jay, talking about the Palau residency. We're at this really interesting time where there's all these sort of like trends and new ideas that are on a Venn diagram related, as you said, and they're going to overlap in very cool and interesting ways. So you have crypto, you have residency programs, you have people having dual, triple citizenship, you have e-residencies, you have tax havens, you have all these crazy things. I didn't even name 1/5 of the topics that are in my head, in terms of all these things that are really sort of converging now in different ways. We're starting to see one of my favorite accounts. You should try to get this guy on your podcast too. I've been trying to do it for a while. Is the Sultan of Slow Jamistan. I'm not sure if
Yeah,
you've seen Slow Jamistan on
yeah, I've
Twitter or
seen it.
anything. It's just hilarious. It's like this guy who bought a little bit of like an acre in the desert in California, and he said, "I'm going to create a new country. It's called Slowjamistan, and it's like one of the hottest micronations. And there's this whole idea of micronations now that started with Liberland and with Sealand, which was like a oil rig. I think it's even still going, Sealand. And there's this whole like micronation world, and Slow Jamistan is just hilarious. It's like this guy's like a radio DJ that has like it's like slowjams.fm or something like that, and he just named
Yeah.
his country Slow Jamistan.
Well, and there's a new generation too. There's like Prospera and Praxis and
Yeah,
Plumia.
that's a
Yeah,
whole different thing. Free trade zones, special economic zones. We've had a couple guys on the podcast talk about that. And so there's all these just like different things that are converging in really cool ways, and it makes you start thinking like, what is a country, and what is citizenship, and our ideas around citizenship and what a country is and the nation state. These ideas are probably going to change rapidly over the next 100 years.
yeah. One question I had, and this is sort of from a point of ignorance, but for birth tourism, it makes sense the concept, but it's the idea that you can receive citizenships if a child is born in a certain country. But in practice, is that literally like, okay, your wife or girlfriend is 8 months pregnant, you get a tourist visa to go to Brazil, hang out in Brazil, get a nice Airbnb for 2 months, and then you wait. And then one day it's like, here we are, we're visiting this country, the baby's born, and boom, a passport is created. Like, I'm kind of saying, like, is it that easy? Not that that's easy. That's quite a little process to go through, but is it really just kind of visiting a country when someone's pregnant so that the baby pops and then you get a passport?
Yeah. How far do you want to take this back? So there's kind of two schools of thought around this, and it's like two Latin terms. It's like juris sanguinis, which is like citizenship by blood, and then juris something, and that's citizenship based on place of birth.
Hmm.
And I'm the worst.
You're bringing the Latin into my Latin life for sure
Yeah,
here.
I'm
Yeah.
not doing this super well, but basically, the long story short, in the Americas, we have this system of citizenship by place of birth. So if you're born in a country, you become a citizen there. That's not necessarily the case in Europe or Asia. Just because a baby is born in Germany does not necessarily make it German, or just because a baby is born in Japan does not necessarily make it Japanese if the parents haven't accomplished 5 years of residency, or they're not both citizens, or blah 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 blah, any amount of complications. And so the world is actually quite cleanly split in terms of the Americas, the Western Hemisphere being citizenship by birth, and then the rest of the world being more about kind of bloodline and where the citizenship of the parents are from. So I think that's one of the things that's actually attractive about Latin America. Just another plus in the long list of pluses about Latin America is that you have all these opportunities around birth tourism that oftentimes don't exist in the old world.
Yeah, we'll link to the map in the show notes, but I've seen it, and if you literally look at it, it's exactly like you say. The Americas are colored almost entirely one color, and then most of the rest of the world is colored another way. It's kind of choosing my Latin life and Latin America as the place to promote. I know you do more than promote it; you educate about it. But there's other places in the world that are interesting nomad hotspots. Southeast Asia has a reputation going back at least several decades. But there is something that I've heard that's just it's a core reality. I don't consider it xenophobic or racist when people say it, but it's just that, moving to Latin America, it is multicultural and people from around the world can integrate there. Something that is for non-Thai people, for non-Vietnamese, for non-Japanese, non-Chinese, that is harder to do when you go to some of the Asian countries, whether they're Asian remote work or nomad or backpacker hotspots or sovereign individual hotspots. There's just something about Latin America in the nature of it being part of the Americas and having a certain history. Somewhere like Brazil, there's no way, nobody looks like a Brazilian in a way that's not going to be quite the same if you are in love
Hmm.
with a beautiful place like Thailand.
Hmm.
No, you're not gonna, even if you learn Thai, even if you've got the cojones to learn a different script and a harder language for someone who speaks English or a Romance language, it's still gonna be a much longer journey or never to become Thai. Where I don't feel the same way about Latin America, right?
There's no way. I don't even think it's possible to become Thai, even if you marry a Thai woman and your kids are Thai. I don't think it's even possible to naturalize at this point in time. It's uh, it's pretty crazy. I mean, that's the thing about Asia as a whole is you can't really naturalize as a citizen in East Asia with rare exceptions. Like maybe in Cambodia, maybe in Taiwan. I think maybe in Philippines, not sure about that, but the other countries you can't even naturalize, you can't even become a citizen. And so, it's harder, and also they don't really give permanent residency out that much either. So you're just going to be on this perpetual temporary residency. And so just, as a human it's very tough to mentally commit to life in a place where you're not a permanent resident, you'll never become a citizen, and you'll probably never master the language. So I think Asia's maybe cool for Australians or cool in your 20s and stuff, but long term, I don't think it makes sense for most people. I mean, obviously, when you go to these places, you'll meet some old alcoholic British veteran or something like that, and those guys are always fun to be around. But I think, long story short, Asia is just it's harder to settle and build roots in compared to Latin America and maybe Europe.
I've already said this a couple times, but you've had an amazing breadth of guests and all kinds of different stories have been told on your podcast. One that I thought was funny, inspiring, surreal, and a bit zany all at once was there's a story of Dylan Madden trying to meet Andrew Tate for the first time, which I
Okay.
just thought was like it was like a tale. It's like I heard he was going to be in Washington D.C. and then Dylan, drove in a car to meet him, and he was like, it's like a whoa. I'd never thought I would hear this kind of story about a controversial but very popular public figure and someone that was close to him. So there's all kinds of stories embedded. Do you have any favorites or kind of things you learned or thought were like highlights if someone was gonna go back and they say, "Okay, I've got 5 episodes in me."
Oh man, dude, tell me more because I enjoy hearing it from you because I don't really have people tell me that often. As I said before, I don't like when you say, you listen to that. I think that's epic, and people don't tell me it enough. Like anything else come to mind? Maybe you had Jay from Palau because I think I was like the first one to have him on a
It was
podcast.
the inspiration for me knowing Jay even better and inviting him on this pod. The great thing
Yeah.
about Jay, which is another one I enjoyed, was it really kind of solidified for me in your conversation with him. It's like this insider thing where if you were talking to the lead, and I think this is a kudos to Jay and big ups to Jay. if you were talking to like a director of a ministry of a program from like the British Ministry of Immigration or the Canadian such and such in Ottawa, and you had them on the pod about some program, they'd probably be like, well, we're very excited about our new S4 visa, and we believe it will help all Britons. And the Canadian thing would be the same. It'd be like, oh, all Canadians need a chance to grow and prosper. And
Wow, that's a good
yeah,
Canadian accent. You can just turn that on and off?
I had a startup that we built and sold a startup in the 2010s, and over that time, I moved to New York to run it and to raise VC money and build out the market. And for like the first 2 months, actually going even before that, when I was just on the phone trying to sort of talk to customers, we had U.S. customers. It was like a U.S. healthcare market,
Yeah,
and
and
they're
they
like,
thought you
"Are
were
you
from
from
Minnesota
Are
or
you
something?
from Minnesota? Are you from Canada?" And I got so tired of that. That was like the third thing they would say. So I just sort of slightly altered my voice to be a little bit more American, and it stuck with me. But I can always turn on. There's a Canucks game coming. We're gonna go get seats. Eh? Get me a Stella. Get me a Kokanee. Niedermeyer
That's
at the
funny,
blue
bro.
line. Um,
That's funny. I've
uh,
never heard someone,
yeah,
like, really put it on like
yeah.
that. It's that funny. I can't
Yeah.
really do that.
And you know what Canadians will always say? Like this is kind of Vancouver, BC too. There's a different kind of Montreal thing and the Ontario thing, but they'll always say like, "Oh, we don't have an accent. It's just the California accent." And it's like, no, it's fucking not. The California accent is like, "Hey man, let's go to Newport Beach and do this and that." And the Canadian accent's like, "Oh yeah, I was driving up to Nanaimo, and I'm going to Tofino." It's like it's not the same accent. You're lying to yourselves.
Yeah, it's
You're yeah,
oh, man.
you're full of it. No, you just can't. You're a goldfish that doesn't know you're in water in a goldfish bowl. It's like there is 100% an accent.
I also thought that maybe my Canadian-esque tendencies would be a bit of a detractor on the podcast as well, and I definitely wish I had a bit more of like a gravelly radio voice, but such is Canada.
Well, I don't. I mean, it's a very it's kind of a weird thing. You would never get. I don't know what it's. Maybe it's like someone from the north of England trying to get rid of the North England thing to work in London. But like, what other country is someone saying like, "Oh, I kind of want to be." I changed my accent. I mean, I guess that probably happens all kinds of places, but I don't think like a British person that comes to work in America from Britain doesn't like, okay, I need to put on an American accent like and change, like a Hollywood actor, like Christian Bale.
When I started spending more time in the States, I definitely made some adjustments to my English. Like we used to say in Canada, we would say Southern, and then you go to the States and you learn that it's Southern, not
Yeah.
Southern. And I had to change that one just to not get like ridiculed.
Yeah, there's little things. Like even just in Canada, people might say like, "Where have you been?" But in America, it's like, "Where have you been?" And like even just, I think that like there's just things you don't even know about.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
like if you're gonna say I'm not, I won't, you might say like I'm not gonna. Like that might be something I hear someone say in like Vancouver Island. I'm not gonna, and no one would say that in the East Coast of America. I'm not gonna.
It's funny. By the way, another random question I was going to ask you is, tell me if I'm remembering this correct, but do you have Irish citizenship by descent?
No, I mean my last name is Irish, but the Irish person would be like from the 1830s if there was one.
Okay,
Duggan is a fairly common Irish clan name,
it
but
is. It is.
it's too far back. I think the potato famine or something.
Yeah, gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
It'd be nice to just get automatic EU citizenship. I remember when I was a teenager hearing about someone. It's like, well, my grandma's British or my grandpa's Portuguese, so I got an EU passport. I'm like, you're so lucky. Whatever. I didn't even know why I thought they were lucky, but yeah.
Another random theme for you, I guess, as two podcasters talking amongst each other, is you talked a bit about just my guest strategy or and that kind of thing. I would say that it's been so natural, man. I've never been at a point where I've been like, oh my God, I need to start reaching out. I don't have enough guests. I need to fill the spots. Dude, it's just, without even reaching out really, almost just by inviting on people I'm already talking to, I just say, hey, you open a guesting on? They're like, yeah, when? And then I just send them to the link and they sign up. And I've never really done any serious outreach, so it's been all pretty normal. And so I think that's probably contributes to the range of guests. I think about the order too. Like I think about, okay, if the last two or three guys have been like real estate bros, I need to switch it up and get someone from a different background on the podcast. And so I try to not have more than like two in a row that are super similar. And so maybe even if I like the order that they're published in might not be the order that I film them in, just because I want to have every single episode be a little bit different after each other. I think I didn't do a good job in the some of the most recent episodes because I had a bunch in a row about real estate, but we're trying to do that. We're trying to have like one episode's an adventure, and then one episode is a tax professional, and then one episode is a YouTuber, and just kind of constantly kind of work around the milieu of different people that we can get. And so I've never had to. I'm at like 100 episodes, and I've never even had to really do any outreach, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I've heard that in a few junctures in a few places that after a reasonable amount of success, and not a giant amount of success, but a decent bar, the strategy often just becomes about triaging all the inbound requests.
Well, I would say though that I'm not just letting people in off inbound. I actually don't even receive that much inbound, surprisingly. I don't have too many people that hit me up or have an assistant hit me up and say like, "Hey, this person would be excellent for your podcast." I actually don't receive all too much of that. Um, it's happened a couple times, and like one or two. I had that recently with actually David Lesperance, who's like a Canadian, very famous Canadian tax lawyer who
Mhm.
speaks about Canadian American cross border issues and kind of for like dual citizens living in Canada, that kind of thing. So he's like super well known. He goes to conferences, and I got a letter from like a middleman like podcast scheduler company, like totally unrelated. And they're like, "Hey, like David Lesperance wants to go on your podcast. If you'll be so kind to have him." And I'm like, "What? That's crazy. That got to be like a dream guest."
Yeah.
Like I would have reached out to him anyway. And so I said yes to that. So that's one. But really, I would say 90% of the guests or more are like straight from Twitter, and maybe a couple Instagram where I like maybe DM the person or something, but it's really almost all like Instagram and Twitter, mostly Twitter.
It's good that you clarify that. I actually would say that the genesis of this podcast, I might be embellishing it a little bit, but it's partially for some reason in the course of going to a few remote work events and talking to people and like meeting up with people, meeting up with people in a city. I'm not like as big on Twitter about like, hey, I'm in this city. I don't think I'm that popular yet to do what you do, but at certain times, I've like talked to people about like a niche SEO site I have that's about remote work blogging, and at some point, like it's almost like they misunderstood that it's like prior to this podcast launching 6 weeks ago, they're like, "Oh yeah, I should come on to your podcast." Like when it was just a site, like there was no podcast, and I was like, "Yeah, yeah, sure, sure." And I said that enough times, and like one time I actually like committed to it, even though I don't have one. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess I need to make a podcast now. So I'm kind of embellishing the story, but there was almost an element of like it happens naturally, and then I also like you're way, 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 ahead in terms of volume and quality and maturity of what you've done. But I do start to see how,
I don't know about the second two.
yeah, in a certain way, maturity of the length, the amount of episodes. I've got stamina for an hour. We're at the hour mark here. I know you probably have more stamina than me. I don't. I feel like if I hit, this is just like I'm switching gears here, just riffing, but. I think what I don't know how to do yet is sustain 2 hours the way you do. So I feel like, yeah, we'll be wrapping up in 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll be like, okay, I need to go go hydrate, go do some hot yoga, and lie down because like that hour takes a lot out of me. I'm thinking on the spot, but you've got the Rogan stamina to go for a decent length. So I got to work on that, I think.
Yeah, I try not to I don't want to take I want to be respectful of my guests, and I don't want to make them Rogan episodes, but almost no one needs to or wants to hang up after just an hour. I think everyone's pretty chill about like, I don't know, but yeah, all the episodes kind of end up being like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
I had that with an episode that just got recorded. It's not out yet, and it was booked for an hour where one or both of us had to stop, and it was an hour. And when we got to 55 minutes, we were getting heated, not with each other, but like like about a certain topic, kind of about the
Mhm.
community.
Getting
And it
into it.
was and it was like, okay, now we're just getting started. We got to know each other for 40 minutes, and now we're just getting started. So I might have to adjust this. I've been being respectful, conservative, and cautious about how good I am at podcasting to book hour long slots and not drag someone along for 2 hours if I'm not ready to be
Well, here's the
the
thing
leader.
about
Yeah.
only scheduling it for an hour, and I only schedule for an hour too, is then my calendar looks open and someone tries to schedule something right after, and I'm like, let's be serious. Like
Yeah.
this is not. I'm not going to be able to make this. Like, there's no way I'm doing this podcast in an hour. I think there's only been one that's been less than an hour, which was Ladislas, the Wandering Investor, and it was like 38 minutes or something. I'm sure I could get it. Like we have a better relationship now, so I'm sure I could get him on and do a Joe Rogan one with him. But that's how it was like a year ago. But yeah, they're pretty long. I mean, I think there's a lot of value in like the transcripts and stuff. If once the AI gets good enough, they can just go through the back catalog and like do some stuff with it.
That's strategic. That's thinking ahead of 10 steps ahead of everyone. Yeah, I wonder. I've actually been learning how to sort of call the API. Some of the I'm not a coder by background, but I put a solid 6 months into trying to understand how AI tools are going to affect both entrepreneurship and consulting and jobs, and just like thinking about the next 30 years of making money and kind of getting ahead of things. And it's gonna be wild. It is gonna be wild in the next couple of years how marketing works, how content creation works. Uh, I look at the AI tools and it's like, yeah, there's a lot of the robots are here and it's not a joke. It's not for nerds. It's like they're powerful tools for doing things. And I don't know. I probably a topic for another episode with like, maybe a good idea. Actually, I should bring someone on that like knows like really in depth about all this stuff. But yeah, I wonder what Wi-Fi money is going to look like in 5 years with AI as a bit of a non sequitur.
This is kind of related, and you're closer to this than I am. But I started going on LinkedIn more with My Latin Life, and I made a My Latin Life LinkedIn, and I started connecting with investment migration professionals and remote work people and Chase Warrington and this and that. And I noticed that there's so many of these like remote work advocate people, and I can't quite figure out what they actually do
Y-
other than
You're talking about me? No, I'm just
other than advocate, but like in like a corporate environment type of thing.
no. I know what you mean. It's like they write in that copywriting style, but it's sort of within a company, and it's kind of like I'm trying to think of an example, but it might be something like remote work is not just a phase. Remote work is this. Here are the 6 best practices of remote work, and it's like, is this a job? Is this just an opinion? Is this just a hobby? Like, what is the I know the flavor of what you mean. Are you saying that it's interesting to you, off-putting to you? Like, is it like do you resonate with this, or do you feel like it's kind of alien to you? Like, what's your reaction to seeing all this content like that?
I don't know. I just feel like it's missing like some kind of oomph. You know what I mean? Like it's just
Yeah.
like kind of content for content's sake or something.
Well, yeah. There's definitely like I think there's I'm even jealous or envious a bit of some of the more like I've written about stuff, and I like to think about trends and technology, what's going to happen. But there's that kind of Hunter S. Thompson esque, like journalist in the middle of the jungle type of writing that
Yeah,
some of your
yeah,
guests are really good at.
yeah.
That is very different from the LinkedIn crowd, and I think it's just it's where to place that needle. I think it's kind of where to be on that spectrum. I definitely could write something that's about like I was in this neighborhood and was drinking on a Saturday night, and then this is what happened at 2 in the morning. I'm older now. I don't do as much of that, but there's some stories that could be told. But I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't go there. I'm like a Jerry Seinfeld. I'm not a Dave Chappelle or whatever. I just skip that part. But then, I get jealous and envious when I'm like, oh yeah, okay, these guys are going hard into that aspect of it. Almost that's the entire thing. And it's very compelling in a way that plain vanilla remote work advocacy content is often not compelling at all.
Yeah, I think what I would say is that my guests don't talk about how, the world of work is changing. They're actually actively changing the world of work
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
uh, by living interesting lives and doing stuff. Like, dude, like my friends just like can't understand how I do what I do. I am hitting up like a new waterfall or volcano or whatever every single day and somehow getting all my work done.
I was just gonna say maybe on that front, when you think about communicating what you do, and then there's an audience back home or whatever that doesn't get it, what is it that you think that they don't get? You know, it's still it's this is still niche. The vast majority kind of doesn't get it. Do you have any psychological theory on the average Torontonian being like, no, 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 I need to buy a house in Etobicoke and get a variable rate mortgage, and I won't lay on the Canadian accent too thick, but there's just the vast majority of people still don't get it.
Yeah, there was something I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about monkey branching, which is that if you want to do like a slow monkey branch approach where you're going to wait till you get to the remote job and then go remote after you get the job, kind of more conservative approach, what I would suggest is to do a recon mission of a week or two and go to Colombia, go to Argentina, go to Mexico, whatever, Brazil, and just kind of take it all in and take notes. Maybe visit a couple cities that are at the top of your list that you think maybe have the right mix of amenities and stuff that you're looking for. Maybe you want to check out Florianopolis. Maybe you want to check out Buenos Aires. Who knows? But go do the recon mission because it's really just going to concretize it in your mind more and make it more real and just basically sustain your motivation while you're doing all the trials and tribulations of all the job interviews or all the other random things that need to happen to set up your life in a more remote focused way, because it's a bit hard to be like, okay, I'm going to like you know switch my whole life up to be remote. I'm going to get the remote credit card and the remote health insurance and this and that without having tasted from the fruit. So definitely go check it out first, just so you know what you're missing. And I think that gives you like a much better idea. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great approach, and can't stress enough how the consider a remote job, take baby steps, grab the monkey branches, do a recon mission is a great approach. I think I hear my girlfriend's home, and I'm 15 minutes are my standard 1 hour slot, so I might have to move to wrap up here. But just like we discussed, once you get going, it's like you got enough to talk about for 2 or 3 hours effortlessly. So we'll have to do another episode again soon. We'll trade back. I've been on your podcast once, but whenever the rotation opens up and the long list of people on your podcast for a repeat episode on My Latin Life, I humbly offer my services to come back. But I'm sure you've got an endless queue of people that want to come on there. But yeah, one way or another, let's do it again in another hour or two.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the game plan for remotely serious? Tell me a little bit about kind of like the guests and this and that.
So Game Plan is the most entertaining remote work podcast in the world. It may not be the most informative. It may not be the most focused on Latin America. It may not be the most, best practices for enterprise teams. But I just want to build the number one most entertaining remote work podcast in the world and find advertisers that want to go along on that journey. I've already, identified a few. I've got some friends, and former, business partners on my niche SEO site, Waviator, that I've advertised before that are great candidates for this kind of thing. But I'm focused on the vision of something that is entertaining for people that are interested in remote work. That's a hard thing to do. What does that mean? Funny? Does that mean charismatic? Does that mean I don't know what it means yet, but I'm just putting that up on the
No,
whiteboard.
I like that. I mean, it's an attention economy.
Yeah, I'm an avid listener of other remote work podcasts. It's almost 50% of my podcast feed. My Latin Life, That Remote Life, About Abroad. I listen to all of them. I love all of them. So
Are there any other ones you want to shout out? I'm just curious. So we got Chase, we got Mitko,
I
yourself.
don't know how often he publishes, but I do enjoy Gonzalo Hall's podcast. I think it's Remote Work Movement. I'll get this all correct in the show notes. I don't know. I think he publishes not on a weekly basis. It's every once in a while. But I love anytime Liam Martin and the Running Remote folks. They're a little bit more focused on
Running
what
remote, yeah.
companies can do and and companies going remote. So it's more on the corporate side. But I'm still interested. I don't know the publishing schedule for that, and it may be offline right now in terms of an actual podcast. This is not specifically remote work podcast, but I listen religiously to Richard Bexon's #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast. It's very focused on Costa Rica. So if that's not your thing, you might not be interested. They don't talk about all of, Central America. It's Costa Rica only. But we did a crossover episode that's coming out. It's going to already have come out when you listen to this right now, if you're listening. So you can go listen to it now. And I think that's just the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast. That's a bit more niche.
No, that's cool. That's like the perfect type of stuff I like. So I'll take a look out for that. Dude, I know you want to wrap up. I'm just super jealous of the name Remotely Serious. I think it's an excellent name. Very well done on that, whoever came up with that.
Well, thanks. I wouldn't say this just to return the compliment if I didn't believe it, but I think My Latin Life nails it too. There's no question what you're gonna get when you subscribe, especially with the pink background, the palm tree, the font. I think you're doing all right with your own brand for sure already. So I appreciate the compliment.
Sick, man. I'm glad we got the chance to catch up.
Yeah, thanks, Vince. Let's do it again sometime. And yeah, I hope to see you IRL at one of your events sometime when we can make it down there.
Yeah, it'd be great. Sweet.